welcome to RealAg Live, everybody. Really appreciate you tuning in today here on this very frigid Friday. Everybody, hope you're staying warm, and if you do have to spend any time outside taking care of livestock, keep yourself safe out there, okay? Really do appreciate that hard work that everybody puts in. Today we're going to talk about, I think, a really important topic. We're going to talk about the future of agriculture as it applies to cities and how cities can really become that hub of economic activity for agriculture and really be a part of the support network. And we got a great expert today on this topic. The city of Calgary, very, very interested in this as it tries to really kind of look at what things look like maybe post-COVID, post-focus on oil and gas. There's a lot of things to cover here today. If you want to participate in today's discussion, all you got to do is enter your question or comment in the box, whether you're watching on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook. So let's get rocking right now with today's guest. It is Mary Moran. She is Chief Executive Officer of Calgary Economic Development. Mary, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to chat with you. So let's start off. Why you did a large study, very comprehensive, really looking at agriculture as it relates to the city of Calgary. Why did you do the study in the first place?
Well, look, I've been with the organization for 10 years, and I think about some of the work we're doing today, we probably should have done 10 years ago. But, it was only about 5 or 6 years ago that we decided to focus on agriculture, and it was partly due to the fact there was a structural change happening in the energy industry, but obviously could see the opportunities. And so, as you well know, obviously the agriculture industry is very fragmented and it's hard to get a clear picture of it. And so it was really for us to clearly understand what's our value proposition and how can we go out and support the local community, but also sell Calgary and the region as a great ag hub. And so, we're pretty excited about the work we've done to date and the companies we've worked with to come here. But there's lots more work to do and lots more opportunity.
Well, of course, every year the Calgary Stampede comes around and everybody thinks about, the agricultural heritage of Alberta and Calgary as it applies to agriculture. And then, 10 days later, the Stampede's done and everybody has a pretty big headache and life goes on. Do you think that cities like Calgary, they haven't necessarily, maybe they've ignored a little bit of their agricultural roots at times with more attractive industries like oil and gas?
I think, when you're in a high growth like oil and gas, it's easy not to focus on kind of emerging opportunities or future opportunity. And, we made a really conscious decision to start thinking more about the future and stay focused on the future. And so, and to tell you honestly, like Shaun, it was really about listening to people that were experts in this area throughout this province, and there are many of them. But it's also, a harsh reminder that before oil and gas, we used to be the breadbasket of Canada when it came to agriculture, and we should be very proud of that. But we know that even technology is having such a profound impact. And so, the type of workers that are needed and the opportunities that people can have in this community are quite profound.
So in the study, you kind of provide some analysis of some global agribusiness hubs. How do you define what that is and what you're trying to strive towards?
Well, I think probably the greatest thing that I think is a struggle in a lot of areas is just coordination and collaboration. And that's across the multiple subsectors of the agriculture industry, but also making it easier for people that want to come here, whether they be a small company starting up to do ag tech or a larger company, that they can navigate it. And so, our first step forward, which we're still working on and have lots of work still to do, was to sign an MOU with Olds College and to do a smart ag corridor. And of course, shortly on the heels of that, we were all trying to submit a supercluster application to the government of Canada for a supercluster here on smart ag. And unfortunately, we weren't successful, which was unfortunate. But that connectivity and that network, that the concept of a supercluster here would have been really super helpful with the supercluster. But, and so it really is about coordination and trying to capitalize on our opportunities. And I think the common themes
throughout the agriculture industry are the digitization. And so, as many farmers will say, that it's not your grandfather's farm anymore, or your grandmother's farm anymore. And so that's a kind of a common thread across all subsegments of agriculture industry. And so how can we advance that?
Yeah, and we hear sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and frankly, how can we put displaced energy workers into that field, right? Which, I'm still a believer that we will always be an energy center, but the things we excel at are energy and agriculture. And, we're like, Calgary is a city and a region that has been solving problems for the world, whether it be providing energy or providing food. And so, we really got to capitalize on that.
Yeah, and we hear a number of cities always referring to, we're going to be the Silicon Valley of the North. That's one that gets thrown around. If you're talking about tech jobs, boy, agriculture, there's a future there, just when you think about the technology that's involved in the industry.
100%. And I would say it's not, when people say we're going to be Silicon Valley North, I always kind of cringe, to tell you quite honestly, because that's not our key strength. I could, Vancouver may want to be that, or Toronto might want to be that, or Waterloo may want to be that, or Ottawa might want to be that. But our real opportunity is embracing advanced technologies across all of our sectors. So primarily energy, agriculture, transportation, logistics, aerospace, but increasingly so in things like life sciences, health, creative industries even. But embracing those technologies and making us more competitive, more predictive, more productive, and selling those technologies to the rest of the world. Because usually if it can work here in this cold weather, hardy weather, tough geography, then you can sell it anywhere, right? And so we did a research study a few years ago that said, what is the investment that's expected in advanced technologies across Alberta? And it was $18.5 billion. And the fastest growth was actually, and adoption was actually, in the ag industry.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting. Getting back to the global business hub for a sec, I've been to RTP in North Carolina, where you create this idea, sort of, we built it, they will come, where you create you enable companies to set up shop, and that, if you attract some big names, then you create, some of the services that want to be attached to them, and it kind of builds out from there. Is that the way you look at it today, or is that kind of an older way of thinking?
No, I think it's more a regional play, but definitely having the anchors of head offices in downtown Calgary is really, really important. The energy industry isn't that different, right? It's not like we have fossil fuels or carbon molecules underfoot in Calgary. We don't. We also don't have a field in the middle of Calgary or downtown Calgary either that's producing agriculture products. So, most of our industries are actually regional plays. And so, but having that headquarter, having a good airport to move goods and certain products around the world are really key ingredients. And so, we were delighted that Bayer Monsanto consolidated here, Dow DuPont put their crop science group here, BASF moved from Mississauga, and so obviously Nutrien, UFA. But, we've got lots of work to do. But, and I think the corridor between the smart farm up at Olds College and the companies that want to come here and test products like RealAg is really super important.
What a lot of people don't realize is there actually really is a competition behind the scenes. Like it's city versus city and trying to attract these businesses. So how do you have like a whole slide deck? Here's why you should choose Calgary, and
100%.
Okay, tell us about 100%. That. How does that work? Like, it's sort of like, here's why you should not choose Seattle, or why you shouldn't choose Saskatoon. Here's why Calgary's the best situation.
Well, I would say, in agriculture, it's sometimes an easier sell. I would say sometimes in ag tech, it's a harder sell. And what I mean by that is a lot of people in ag tech don't necessarily have Calgary even on the radar, right? And so the ag companies will, and they'll know Calgary for the obvious reasons. But I think, we often will go into places like Silicon Valley and talk to, venture capital companies and or ag tech companies, and they'll be, sorry, where's Calgary? Is it near Waterloo?
Jeepers.
Then you go, no, we're right near Banff. Oh, I've been to Banff before. Well, then if you've been to Banff, you've been to Calgary. I'm being a bit facetious, but once we get it on the radar, but yeah, definitely from
from a pitch perspective, we've done a lot of research to understand what our value proposition, where we have the right to win and where we don't. And so it's not like we're trying to be all things to all people, right? And so that's the important part of the work that we've done. And a lot of that input has come from the local community and guiding us to say, this is where our strengths are. This is where our assets are. And, this Lethbridge Olds corridor and frankly, Pan Alberta approach is really what we should be taking. It's not just a city piece. The cities are just, the anchors for it, right? The place where people, company head offices come, but as they say, the logistics tend to congregate.
Well, you mentioned the downtown. Calgary's downtown. The occupancy or unoccupancy rate is, it's very concerning. I'm glad I don't own commercial real estate in the downtown core. So, is that the focus, to fill sort of like those high rises, or is it to attract like processors that are set up in more of the industrial park areas of the city, or is it? I guess maybe it's both.
It is both. I would just say what we do know about the ag companies that we have worked with in the community and or are here, they typically aren't in the downtown core. So, if you look at Nutrien, UFA, BASF, Bayer, Monsanto, none of them are in downtown Calgary, right? They do like to cluster together, but a lot of their workers are coming. They're not, urbanites necessarily, right? A lot of the workers will be people that grew up in a rural community and or live in the suburbs. So, and that's not a bad thing. That's a great thing. But, so they don't necessarily like downtown. So it's not to fill downtown office space, but it is about diversification, which is a bigger than the downtown office space, right?
When you are trying to attract agricultural-based companies to the city, what's the difference in the challenges between trying to attract like the well-established? You mentioned BASF as an example of a company that relocated from Mississauga to Calgary, attracting them versus a startup that's Vencat funded and they're trying to grow and they have big plans and aspirations, but maybe not $1 of revenue yet. Is there a difference in how you would try to attract them?
100%. And a part of it is the knowledge, right? So, in a large company, you would tend to sell the assets you would naturally think of, right? That there's other like-minded companies here. The post-secondaries, the talent coming out of the post-secondary system, the airport, as they say, how, and then from a family perspective, ensuring that they can assimilate into the community. It's about, having a safe community, about the quality of life, the neighborhoods they could live in, cost of living, all of those kinds of things. But when you're talking about a startup, it's many, many things, like including, are there tax incentives? What kind of, who can you introduce me to? And what's the cluster look like? Am I going to be able to get talent here? Am I with like-minded people, even cross industry, because they may not necessarily, they might start in ag, but might want to solve a problem in energy after, or transportation. And I think, when it comes to startups and tech companies, the perception of Calgary is still very much so, because we measure this every single year across the country and around the world. It very much still is that we're an oil and gas town. And the funny thing about startups and tech companies, like they want to move around, right? So they might start with a startup, but might want to go to another company. So they want to know where their first opportunity is, but their second, third, and fourth opportunity. And people just don't understand that there's this burgeoning tech ecosystem, because I don't believe tech is a sector. It's a way of doing business now, and it's across all sectors. But there's this burgeoning tech ecosystem here, that there's lots of really interesting tech companies, and some of them have been hugely successful. I mean, Calgary's done 4 $1 billion deals, and only one of them touched energy lightly, right? So that just goes to show you that we're on a road to diversification. But, I think and also, just with the startup, ag tech startup is that Smart Farm is a real selling asset for us, up in Olds, because they get to go test real live, probably partner with a corporate or a major and see if it works, right?
Yes, Stuart Cullum and everybody is doing a great job at Olds College. We've had him on the show, so it definitely is an asset. And you carry it out. There's things like an airport, those secondary, post-secondary education institutions that create that supply of high-skilled labor. All of that kind of fits together in the pitch. when you're trying to attract people. Those are things that we sort of like, oh yeah, whatever, SAIT, the airport, whatever. But
Right.
like they're major factors in the recruitment of the agricultural industry to this, like a city like Calgary.
Yeah, one I would say, and also the network. Like, am I going to be with leaders that are, of similar thinking and or that will provide a good network for me? But I can tell you from the front row of trying to sell Calgary across all sectors, usually the number one issue for people or leaders deciding to relocate a company and or start a company is talent. And so, as a province right now, we know that the energy industry is just not going to be the mega job creator that it was, even if we optimize it, right? Even if we advance renewables, we advance clean tech, we potentially get pipelines, better regulatory process. There's not a CEO in downtown Calgary that will tell you they're going to be the mega job creator that they once were. So you think about those, even the displaced workers here in Calgary, and there are a lot of them, lots of engineers. And what would be a natural progression for them? Well, of course, clean tech, renewables would, but agriculture, and Stuart Cullum and I talk about this all the time, is, why don't we do a center in downtown Calgary to retrain energy workers to go work in agriculture? Energy workers in this town have been solving problems forever, and the application to go solve problems in the agriculture industry, it's equally fulfilling, right?
So what's the reaction to that? Like that sounds fantastic at 100,000 feet. That makes a ton of sense. When those conversations happen and say, what if you actually shifted over here to agriculture? What's the reaction when those conversations happen? Is there the intrigue as we would hope there would be?
Well, we have actually naturally seen some workers make that migration, but I think we have to do more of it and do it very deliberately. So, we've been going to the government of Canada, who last year gave us a grant to do energy to digital transition. So people that know the industry know where, when, why to create data, or why you create data, but not how to use it real time. And so it was a digital training program, which is also a natural progression. And once you have that digital skill, the application can go across many sectors. And so this year we went back to them and did an application and said, yes, we want to do digital, but we also want to do clean tech / renewable, and we also want to do energy to ag. And so we're still waiting for, and I would just say, from a federal perspective, we know the federal government are very focused on agriculture as they are on clean tech, right? And so this is our time to advance that, align our dollars at a city and a province level with where the feds are going, because multiplying those dollars or using them as leverage dollars, particularly around training, and frankly, every industry is going to have to do this, right? I mean, it's just the future of learning in the next generations.
In the conclusion of the report, you essentially, in the paragraph, it says more of a complicated sector than many perceive it. Explain that.
Well, I think it goes back to that one. I think, as they say, agriculture and farming in particular isn't. I mean, I come from a farming family way back, my grandparents, but it's not that farm anymore, and so it's complicated that way in the sense of the digital applications. To be more predictive and more productive and more efficient and more environmentally friendly and focus on climate change, all of that, but. It's also that the agriculture industry, and I think from a person who hasn't worked in it but has observed it, it's head hurting how many subsectors and how many needs they have across the sectors, and how do you create a common thread? Because there's lots of policy related issues that seem to stifle the agriculture industry, sometimes greatly unnecessarily. I'm not a policy wonk by any stretch of the imagination, but I see the hurdles that they have to go through individually as subsectors, and it's just really hard to get that collective movement, right? So you might make some advancement in one sector of it, whether that be right now it's protein-based opportunities, but it's not necessarily helping pulses or whatever the case may be. And so I just, I think it's really, it's a really complicated network, and I'm learning every day. Believe me, Shaun, I don't proclaim to be an expert. I think there's so many experts in this community that I learn 5 things by noon usually in agriculture every day, right?
Well, some may say, okay, perceptions. Yeah, well, Stampede doesn't help that, but I think actually, I think of, is it the Agrium building where they have there's
Yes.
different commodity groups in there. They have done a really good job of trying to put agriculture right in the face of
Yeah.
people that are attending from around the world. So I think that's actually changed a lot.
I do too. And I think, Stampede is a great asset. And we actually hold a Stampede investment forum. And, 5 years, 6 years back, there probably wasn't anybody representing agriculture. And I mean, it's just so obvious. The connection is so obvious. So, we've shifted. And sometimes I think that the Stampede Investment Forum should only be focused on agriculture because it would really help propel the attention that's required. And what a better place to do it.
Well, obviously, there's a lot of agricultural production that's happening around a city like Calgary, similar to Saskatoon, Regina, Winnipeg, Guelph. Has Calgary looked at all at things like vertical farming and producing food inside the city limits, and what's holding it? Yeah, talk about that. I'm interested.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I did another interview that was talking about office space this morning, and say, look at with respect to our office space, we should leave no stone unturned, and the things we should be looking at are vertical farming, for sure, and kind of closely related to it, but not completely related to it, is even micro distribution centers, right? So how do you get to the food? It's more focused on e-commerce, but it could apply to things like vertical farming and how do you get food to people quickly, right? And so doing micro distribution hubs. And so I don't think we should leave. And there's jurisdictions that have done this pretty well. And they often require government support and, more importantly, government alignment, which is hard some days, right? And so I think that it's funny because Stuart and I have been talking about that one as well, and I think there's a great opportunity to do that. And in fact, I got an unsolicited request the other day. Somebody sent me an email and said, I don't know why we don't turn the Calgary Tower into an ag tech center and do a vertical farm on part of it and a training center. And so, it's great to see these ideas coming, for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. How do you balance off? Like, I'm thinking of on the processing side, like there was the Roquette plant that built in Manitoba. Obviously, High River has the Cargill plant, meat processing plant. When trying to attract plants or processing facilities like that, which really create that production hub around a processing plant, how do you balance off like the incentives to try to get them to do that? Because we've seen where front page of the Calgary Herald, government gives a tax break to XYZ company. Like, how do you, like, some of those are realities in trying to attract some of those companies to invest in around a city like Calgary. So how do you balance it off with the public?
Yeah. I mean, we're not big on tax incentives. There's actually no tax incentive at the city level, but we will use our Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund to attract companies here. But, our expectations are high, right? So the city of Calgary's, it's the city of Calgary's money. We just steward it for them. And, we're looking for large opportunities, companies that are going to be hundreds of jobs, not a couple of jobs, right? Or 20 or 30 or 40 jobs. Or it really, if for a politician to stand up, it really has to be hundreds of jobs. And so, we haven't done any investments in agriculture, but all of our investments require companies to do something else, right? So, for example, we attracted the world's largest, well, it is now because they got acquired, but the world's largest gaming company. And it wasn't just about, hey, move to Calgary and we'll give you money. It's move to Calgary and we'd like to partner with you in the community. So you can do an innovation hub that will help spur other companies. So they'll use their expertise to teach other gaming companies to become bigger or scale or whatever the case may be. So we're very big on working with companies that are thinking about Calgary, but there's always a give back into the community. So it could be invest in the State Digital School in downtown Calgary, or it could be provide training programs for unemployed workers, or it could be create a gaming or a fintech accelerator that will help produce more companies, right? So many jurisdictions in the US are very incentive driven. It never happens at a city. There's many cities in Canada that benefit from provinces having a lot of money to do be in the incentive game, but it's not been Alberta's strength. And so some would say, well, especially for big corporations, there's a built-in incentive. It's called 8% corporate tax rate, right? And so that cost savings, the cost savings of office space right now, no payroll tax, no PST, no healthcare premiums, can be a significant saving for a sizable company, for sure. So there's built-in incentives. And so that's why it's really important for us to be really deliberate and selective of companies we partner with, that we may provide them with a motivation to come here, but we always ask them to do something here.
Yeah, and how do you make sure you stay connected to some of the stuff that's happening on the primary side? So do you sit down in round tables with different sectors of agriculture? Obviously there's the primary sectors, but then there's also like that horizontal, like you did a horizontal analysis in the study too. How do you make sure you're getting all the different perspectives as you try to put forward the pitches to attract the industry to the city?
Yeah, so we have an agriculture advisory committee, and that is a remarkable group of leaders across sectors. And there's been such interesting kind of times in that ag roundtable. Like, people, like, originally it was very traditional, and people that were very seasoned in their subsectors of the agriculture industry. We learned lots. It was really great basic knowledge. And then we started to bring in people that were doing kind of more technology-driven thing. And there was a time when it was a bit awkward, but I think the reality is the collision and creativity and collaboration that has come out of that roundtable has been they've guided us tremendously on that study. And I think it's really important that we worked with an outside consulting firm too, that has to synthesize through that to make a clear picture, but also get buy-in by the community. So, that is the first step of creating an action plan. And there was lots of things to come out of there that we can action, and we've got to get moving on the action, right? So, it's one thing to create strategies, but if you're not implementing them, and now our job is to prioritize. And that's where it gets complicated in this industry. So what is the highest priority? But you really got to look at the long-term yield, job creation, and, the diversification agenda within.
Are there other industries that you're trying to attract? So obviously agriculture is a focus. Are there other industries that are a focus as well?
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously in clean tech is a great opportunity right now. And again, it, aligning with where the federal government are putting their funding, but it's also natural for us. I mean, there's no question about it. Like we have such a great opportunity here because of the work we've done too, and the fact that the energy industry has been so good at environmental, social, and governance standards, that we have an opportunity to stand up and really be the clean tech hub of Canada. And so, I think that's super, super, super important. So we're going after clean tech, and there's clean tech companies and funds setting up here now. But we're also going into, and renewables is another one that we've been pursuing for many years. But we're also looking at aerospace. We're looking at financial services, or more importantly, fintech within financial services. We bat way above our weight when it comes to fintech. Creative industries, film and television is on fire right now in this community, and even during COVID, because we were the first city up and operating. We run a $28 million film center. Warehouses are being converted to film studios. We've got world-class crews here, and then the one that's really in its infancy is life sciences, and life sciences has a lot of overlap with agriculture, right? Yeah. And so we invested in $8.5 million in Life Science Innovation Hub up at the University of Calgary, and we expected it would take a few years, and it's right now it's 93% full in the lab and 87% full in the office space during COVID, and they're creating great companies out of there. So. But it's interesting though, Shaun, it's like technology is across all of them, right? It's really, really interesting. And so Calgary has such a great opportunity to be that digital center for our industrial sectors.
How do you judge success? Is it jobs created? Is it economic output of the state? Like, how do you judge success?
Yeah, I mean, it's I think there's obviously jobs and our and a more diverse economy would be the things that we would measure ourselves on. So definitely, we're very focused on the number of jobs we support and assist, but we're also very focused on the diversification piece. So what industries are we creating those jobs in? Obviously, office space is one that's very daunting to us, and that's not an easy fix. It's the most complicated situation in North America right now. We have more office space on a per capita basis than any other jurisdiction city in North America by a long shot. Double Toronto, triple places like Pittsburgh, Denver, 4 times as much as Detroit and Austin. And so we have enough office space to support a population of 4 million people, and we have 1.5. So we got a lot of work to do there, right? Yeah. And it was built on a $100 oil strategy of big offices, and so there's going to be lots of conversion of many things that happen in there, including, more tech related companies being, which we are seeing come into the downtown core. But the other things we talked about, including office to residential conversion, vertical farming, micro distribution centers. So there's lots of work to do there. So yeah, 100%. We have about 8 sectors that we focus on. Our partners at Tourism Calgary focus on tourism, which is getting completely beat up these days. And that's fragile industry. It's a fragile industry anyway, right? And so I was talking to my colleague and said it feels like the longer this goes on, the faster it will bounce back in some ways, because people will have so much pent up demand, and we have an insatiable appetite for travel and experiences. So,
Yeah, unbelievable. That office space number you gave me, that's mind blowing. Wow, that's
we could put another 100,000 people downtown in Calgary easily.
wow. Okay, well,
easily, which would,
important work to do. Absolutely.
yes.
Mary, thank you so much for joining us here today on RealAg Live. I really appreciate it, and keep up the effort to attracting becoming that global agricultural hub. I think it's a really interesting concept, and I appreciate you joining us here today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And any listeners have ideas, I'm happy to take them.
Absolutely. Hey, I want to encourage everybody to tune in to RealAg Radio today at 4:30 Eastern. We got a great RealAg Issues panel. We got Jeff Nielsen, Lindsay Smith, and Kelvin Hepner will be my guests. We're going to talk about some of the biggest issues of the week. We got Buttergate to talk about. What's going on between Canada and India? Like, are we on a good footing with these vaccines or not? What's happening? And how do the Indian farmer protests play into all that as well? Thanks for everybody for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Live. Have yourselves a great long weekend. Cheers, everybody.